The original intent for Friends for Good was to bring together three congregations that were very different, to cross borders in ways that we wouldn't expect. The Trinity Fellowship as an evangelical Christian church, Islamic Association of North Texas as really the leaders of the Islamic community here in the Dallas area, and First Unitarian Church, a progressive Unitarian church in our community, came together to see if we could find friendships and really boil down some of the noise that was out in the world about how different we were, and find out what our commonalities were. And not only that, but then also to delve into our differences and see if the friendships we built would last beyond those differences. People in the program came together and found each other human beings that they wanted to be with.
So here's Friends for Good. I'm Reverend Kanter. I'm here with Imam Shpendim and Keith Hileman. And we've been working on Friends for Good for about 6-8 months.
The challenges we're facing are the culture we live in. And in the midst of all this conversation, this incredible rise of Islamophobia that has been stimulated by terrorist acts and volatile public speakers and even religious figures.
We are gathered here for the beginning of an experiment to bring three congregations together. We are gathered to learn. We are gathered to learn to support each other in the fragile learning about our own bias and difference. We are forming friendships. We are challenging ourselves to break barriers. We are here to point to the world we want to see, one without hate or animosity, that lives across religious difference.
So Shpendim and I met when he first came to Dallas, and we connected over a couple things, one being our having grown up in the same area, but the other was that the church, our church, First Unitarian, was the place where the Muslims found a place to pray in 1972.
And so being new into the area and having found Daniel through the clergy association at the Presbyterian Hospital, if I remember that correctly, came to realize from him some qualities that were very welcoming and opening, and it was basically something similar to what I had also experienced from the Unitarians up in Rockford, Illinois.
I had met Shpendim a year before I first heard about Friends for Good at the annual Mosque Interfaith Dinner. Being a church, our location is just under a half a mile from the mosque. We had been trying to develop a relationship with the mosque, just to reach out, care for our neighbors, be concerned about the benefit of our community.
And so the three of us started having lunch together. We've had lunch probably every month for the last 6 months, practicing Friends for Good. Talking across our differences, finding similarities, developing friendships, challenging ourselves to see each other and to know each other.
You can read books to learn about Islam or Unitarianism, but it's very different than knowing Muslims or Unitarians or the like. And that requires something. It requires a risk. It requires stepping out to make that first contact and then commit additional time. And it's unbelievably valuable. And we're already hearing the feedback from our first gathering proving the value of that.
We also are created this evening to be rather structured, and we want you to bear with us. It is structured so that we can each be heard, we can each be seen, and we can spend some time just sowing the seeds of this friendship.
One of the challenges is really kind of coming to a maturity of being able to feel comfortable with who oneself is, beliefs, practices, and to go outside of that comfort zone in a way that truly is meaningful, recognizing that the community that we live in is multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, a pluralistic society as a whole. And it's all one ship that we're on. And we need to realize that there's got to be the sense of a team, of being able to, despite these diversities, to value each other and to see that we're either sailing safely ashore all together, or we're all going to be hurt by this. And we don't want to be in any way adding to what there is of the problems, nor should we import whatever there is of conflicts that are happening overseas and make them our own domestic issues, but rather to be able to prove through the contacts, the relationships that we have with each other, that we write our own story. And in doing so, we want to go ahead and have this wonderful narrative of something successful, something wonderful that is here in Dallas.
We're here to represent ourselves and our small communities. We're not here to evangelize each other or fix each other or delve right now into the issues of why ISIS exists or any of that. We're here to build friendships. And we know this is a beginning step. And now here we are, the first of 3 dinners and 3 conversations.
And one of the things I see that's unique about this model from others that I've interacted with in the past, but you might get different faith congregations together under the premise of we're going to learn about each other.
Yeah.
And you talk about the topics of faith or faith practices, and theological identity and conviction. And all those things are true and necessary and good to talk about. But the starting point for this kind of dialogue is, what about you? How do I get to know you?
Tell me your story. Yeah.
Yes, tell me your story. And the idea of those kind of things happening or replicating in homes and workplaces, to me, is one of the most exciting things. Because if you get to know somebody, well, then you earn some trust to get to know what they really hold. And maybe even influence in ways that stretch us all to think more broadly and differently for the common good.
Yeah.
And so I think my biggest aha was just the willingness of everyone at the table to be genuine and open with one another and not just sort of reflect politely about friendship.
We came in with the intention of talking honestly. And basically just the choice of doing that is what made it so that we could do that.
One person starts. One person starts and gives others permission and welcome to do it.
And once you have the intentional moment, then you have a curiosity and an obligation to actually see the other as God's creation.
Shared experience is one of the things that brings people together, and there aren't too many opportunities for this kind of intentional shared experiences across our faiths. There's a lot more in common, I think, than I often realize or am conscious of, and that was a good reminder to me in the conversations tonight.
And it was great making new friends and connecting with old friends. This is what it's about, being all God's creation, coming together. And as we were saying at our table, if you love God, you've got to love His creation.
And I found it just really amazing how quickly people warmed up to each other, and before we knew it, we were laughing and chuckling over what we had in common, and some of our differences too.
I definitely felt like I made a lot of friends here tonight, so awesome.
And hopefully that we can meet each other, not just in the next event, yes, we met another one many times, we get some meeting friends.
Built into Friends for Good is at least a 3-meal commitment. And to show up even when it gets uncomfortable. And we know that as we're we're considering the design of this, that it can get uncomfortable. And we're okay with that. And we've been uncomfortable with each other just in some of the things we've said about what we believe. And so we're modeling that too.
Not only have we accepted each other as we are, and we feel safe among each other, but there's this reinforcement of really helping to strengthen who we are and to make that something that transcends into our families and our congregation as a whole. And I think this is a fantastic display of what it means to be proud of who you are and what you are, and to hold your beliefs and not feel that you have to compromise on anything, but with that to still see the tremendous value that there is in the other person.
And to realize that you can have conversations that are meaningful about religion in a world where it seems like we've taken that off the table. I mean, social media, you can't talk about it. I mean, things get polarized in the workplace.
Right.
I think this could be a model for a totally different type of dialogue that can not just transform homes, but even communities in the way they would interact across communities of faith, also in the marketplace or grocery store, wherever folks would engage.
We're going to want to go ahead and focus on how we can take this Friends for Good initiative beyond the table and conversation, but to hopefully take it beyond that into what you're going to give us of different, different suggestions, ideas. So just as a reminder with regards to, there will be a collection, and what we're going to ask is that each table, perhaps the table lead will basically collect whatever it is that's being donated. It's going to go to the network. And what we're going to want to do for you is we're going to want to go ahead and actually sum it up and tally it up for you this evening, just so you have an idea of how much we've been able to collect and give on behalf of this initiative of ours. And with that said, Pastor David also has the numbers from last time that he'd like to share with you.
Oh yeah, great. Thanks everybody. Last time we raised $1,025 for the North Texas Food Bank. That was great.
I see a theme going. Everyone wants to service, which is beautiful. We haven't decided exactly what we're going to do, but we agreed that we should do something of a community service so we give it back to people. And then this also came from Glenda, where she said we need to go observe God's beauty. So we're going to actually take a trip to the Arboretum and observe God's beauty there. And then, of course, since our friend Cheryl is so into fitness, she's going to add a fitness aspect to it too.
The best way to start is to say thank you. Thanks for committing to 3 meals. You jumped into something that we weren't really sure what was going to happen, as the 3 Musketeers had kind of made things up along the way. But we made it to the 3rd meal, and so far the feedback we hear within and outside of this group has been fantastic. In a world where we're counting bomb explosions and terror by the week, in a culture, even politically, that is so polarized, the world needs to have and see these kind of dialogues that take place, that you can, with a deliberate commitment, talk about meaningful things, even when there are deep differences. And so, thank you for being a part of this. We're excited for that. We started off talking about friendship. February, the mosque hosted us just wonderfully to talk about goodness, what is ultimate good. This evening, we're just going to kind of jump right into where we've been building all along and attempt to talk about our differences.
I think there's something is built into our inherent spirit that we want to know each other, but we're held back so many times by what we think might happen, and so Friends for Good sort of breaks that down and says, you know what, you signed up, show up, and let's see. And it's an experiment. And so far, it's going well.
We'll hopefully guide you in safe places, or maybe not so safe places, but we'll be there with you regardless.
Just to actually, as an example of that, I had a person from my congregation basically talk to me about someone who's a colleague at work. And so I said, well, how long have you been working there? Oh, a few years. Well, have you ever had lunch with them before? No. Well, why not? Go ahead, and they have a cafeteria at the workplace, and so why don't you just go ahead and have lunch, talk, just get to know each other.
Yeah.
It almost as though the thought never even occurred to us.
And I want you to appreciate the fact that we are all in each tradition trying to answer the same incredibly wonderful, deep questions. But we answer those very differently. So talk about that. You've got some cards at your table. Just put some things on the table and read it. Oh yeah, these are the differences between us. And the other questions will be very good for your conversation.
Breaking down some of that bias, whatever form it has, is valuable to the personal soul and to every one of our congregation, every person in my congregation. The more that happens, the stronger we become.
It's so much easier to reject an ideology than it is to reject a person. You get to know that.
We are here to work on a toy drive. It's a toy drive event for Ramadan, where we have the 3 congregations who are participating in the Friends for Good program, who came together today at the mosque They brought gifts, toys for needy children.
We have members from 3 different congregations, Trinity Fellowship Church in Richardson, the Islamic Association of North Texas, and First Unitarian Universalist Church, all coming together
to serve together, to build relationships, bring other people into our groups, and promote understanding between the 3 fellowships and also in the greater Dallas area.
I think the idea of Friends for Good is not to diminish the differences of the faith and not to suggest that those differences are unimportant, but to suggest that even in spite of those differences, we can have a real affection for each other.
I think what Friends for Good can do is say, we're your neighbors and we're your friends. We want to know you for who you really are and not how you're represented by a particular group or voice. The ideal of this group is to really promote peace. We'd love to have it worldwide, but where we have influences in North Texas, what we are trying to do is build a framework for relationships and understanding that we are all on the inside people who want the same thing. We want a safe place to live, good schools for our children, plenty of food to eat, and a safe place to worship.
Being different, being diverse, and still being able to talk about diversity, about differences is a great thing. And we could experience that again tonight. We are at a table with, people with different backgrounds and different faiths, and that is not a problem which hinders us to talk about common issues, show our compassion, and caring about others, and seeing behind the wall.
What I was surprised and pleased to see was that when it comes to difference, no one tried to change anybody, and we left sort of comfortable with our differences.
We have already been invited to one of our Christian friends' house dinner. Now they are coming to our house, and we were the first Muslims that ever stepped foot in the door, and they've lived in the neighborhood of the mosque for the last 40 years. So I think that's a great accomplishment in itself.
In my upbringing, I kind of had a naivete where I felt everyone was good, held certain values, do unto others and everything, and not a lot of judgment. And it wasn't until I became a Muslim that I kind of lost that feeling and felt more of the judgment. So this event was just very reassuring that these people are still out there. The people that I knew that I was raised to believe existed are here. And if we can just scratch the surface a little bit for some of these superficial differences, I think everyone will find that to be true.
When I heard about this, I was real excited because it was a way of getting to know people that I wouldn't normally get in contact with and break down some of the stereotypes that we have. This has been everything that I had hoped it would be. We've laughed, we've shared, and we look forward to continuing the relationship.
And I've learned a lot about Islam. I've learned a lot about the Unitarian faith. Just so much, deep information, but also just really fun sharing about expectations and stereotypes and differences, but how we all are very similar.
And we have taken it a step further. We have met beyond the dinners, and Glenna took us to the Arboretum Estates, which was an awesome experience, and we're going to continue, and we're going to have more dinners, and we'll get to know each other even more, and we are friends for good. Yes. Friends forever.
Yes. Amen.
What you've just seen is a result of a process and a framework that brought people together and asked them to cross over the borders of our lives. We live in such separate worlds. Sunday mornings are separate, our workplaces separate us, our images of each other separate us. And the process of Friends for Good is something that we can share and that we implemented to really allow for connections to be made between people. those connections have been abiding, and they've moved beyond the tables in our communities to people's homes and long walks at the Arboretum and friendships that go beyond what we ever imagined. What we find ourselves in now is a climate, national climate, of more fear, especially of our Muslim friends. And all along while we were doing this, there were moments where there were protesters out in front of the mosque with guns saying, "Go home." And we stood strong with them because we knew them and because we became friends and partners in bringing about a just and compassionate world. And so we feel like this has been a great success, something that has been extremely meaningful to these three congregations, and will continue to expand now into our congregations and beyond.